Hello, my name is Benedict. This is episode 4 of the Effective Music series. Up to now, we've looked at the octave and its key and scale, how to start to put that together in a format that's going to give us a structure, a framework for our piece of music, our song, how to then transform those blocks of notes, which are chords, into actually beginning to be a melody. Now, it is, of course, entirely possible to take a free-form melody and say, okay, how can I create chords from that? Obviously, we need to be able to understand, well, what key or scale do those notes best fit into, or do we modify one to make such a situation that it fits, and then what chords would work around that. But it is a little bit more complex to do than it is to say, okay, we've got these chords, therefore we will extrapolate melody out of that. So that's the process that I'm going with, because I'm not looking to be the most about anything. I'm looking to give people a very practical, reliable format, which will allow them to start to get results, and then obviously with practice to then bring in other ideas, other methods, other approaches. Another thing that I feel I really must remind, because I've had a couple of people approach me privately, which shouldn't really happen in this situation, because I keep saying, if this is a thing that you're doing and you're not hiring me privately, then ask the questions publicly, because other people will be asking that question too, and they'll be thinking, well, why are we not covering genre? Why are we not covering rhythm? Why is it all just sort of abstract and doesn't sound like the kind of music that I want to make? Because, as I've said from the beginning, music itself is irrespective of genre. It doesn't matter the intricacies, whether it's disco or opera or the most satanic of black death metal. Fundamentally, it's all the same. And if we only learn a certain set of tropes, which is the memes that make blackest of satanicest of death metalist, then we're keeping a very closed mind to how things work, and possibly even keeping a very closed mind to who we are as an artist. And it's very easy to come in and say, but I'm the blackest of satanicest of death metalist. But what if you're not? What if that's not really where your future lies? And you might be like, but how would you know? And it's like, well, how are you going to know until you get there? But most importantly, the fundamentals for how music work is exactly the same, no matter the form, the genre, the style, the history, the whatever. So the very best way to learn is to learn the fundamentals, and to learn the fundamentals for themselves, completely outside of the extra weight that drags you down of genre. If you had a son or a daughter, particularly a daughter, because they tend to be more driven by these things, but boys are too, and she's trying to find her way in the world through fashion as borrowed from other people, are you not going to stop and say, sweetie, you're not going to find yourself by trying to dress like Taylor Swift, by trying to clone everything that you heard that Taylor Swift done. You're only going to find yourself, your own center, by being you, which means that covering your face with lipstick and wearing your art is not actually helping you find your own center. So as a musician, as somebody who's trying to find their beginnings, then you've got to begin without the weight of a whole lot of stuff, which is, it's window dressing, but it doesn't change the reality. So please, let's keep genre out of this. Once you understand how to do these basics, then you can choose to put lipstick on them. And the way that you choose to apply lipstick, whether it's nice and neat and tidy or all over your face like Robert Smith, that's on you. And that then becomes your style, and it becomes your style rather than a clone of somebody else. Because the last thing that Will needs or has any space for is a clone of Robert Smith. You can't clone Robert Smith, because as soon as you get anywhere near, then you're a bad Robert Smith imitator. And nobody wants that at all. So find your own path by working out what the real path is, and then you're going to express it your own way. Righto, which segues straight into what this next bit's about. This bit is about variations. And variations are a thing that I see those who struggle with music the most. They're the things that they most try not to ever do, try not to ever learn, because they go, well, why should I do that? Well, here's the problem that you are most likely facing. I get stuck in the loop. I make 8 bars and then I'm stuck. And I save that off because it's an amazeballs idea. But then I go make another 8-bar loop and save that off because it was an amazeballs idea, but I couldn't get anywhere with it. If you're finding yourself getting stuck in the loop, getting so far and then going, what do I do with that? This next bit is the thing that takes us from having a spark of an idea to being able to complete it and turn it, whether it's into a 2.5-minute punk song or a 2.5-hour orchestral extravaganza, is all down to this one technique. There are a few variations and iterations on this technique, but fundamentally it's called variation. Variation is like this. If I have a melody that goes, there's only so many times I can play that before it becomes pointless. It's a droning, oh my God, that's worse than Benedict talking about the same things over and over again. So we need to do something different. What happens is that people then go, okay, and that was actually a variation. I was trying for it not to be. That's probably better in the sense of they introduce some random new idea that bears no relationship to the original idea. What defines this? 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4. Can you see what connects this? Ba, 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 ba. What that is, they are variations. So we've got a particular rhythm in this case, and we're applying that to, and that's a variation. That one's a little wild, but we've still got that same rhythm. So variations are same but different. We've got to keep enough that's the same that they become recognizable and make it a little different so that it becomes like, ooh, cool. There's an iteration of the same idea. Perfect variation, because we've got the same rhythm and even the same spread, perhaps, of movement. So if I've got 1, 3, 4, then we'd go 1, 3, 4. We've kept the same interval with our movements. It's another thing that we can do. There are any things that define the pattern become part of the variation. And this is how we expand on a piece. That's the intricate little detail of it. The larger part of that goes into what's called arrangement. And we're going to look at arrangement later. But arrangement is where we start to say, how am I going to express this idea over time? Some songs, we just don't notice the arrangement. And probably that's wonderful. There are other songs where the arrangement becomes more obvious because there are definite breaks and changes. One of my favourite in the modern-ish canon of rock is Guns N' Roses' November Rain. The thing sprawls over 7 minutes or something or other, and there are so many sections within that song. Each one of those sections is part of the arrangement. And while those sections on the surface may seem somewhat unrelated to each other, ultimately they are as one in the song that is November Rain. And that's wonderful writing. It's tremendously well put together piece of music. Whoever is responsible for the arranging and the intricacies of that piece is a master. And I don't know whether that's Axl Rose or Snuffy Waldron or who, but when Guns N' Roses got that quality of arrangements, which is also evident in Sweet Child of Mine, they're tremendous. So variations and arrangements, that ability to do these things, to control them, to not do them randomly, is what separates those from those who write sort of an 8-bar loop and then go and have to file it, and then just have an ever-expanding lot of 8-bar loops, and those who can turn out reliable pieces of work like an Elton John song or a Gunners song or, well, anything, a Ramones song. That's the difference in being able to handle variation and its bigger cousin, arrangement. So let's start to look at doing some variation. We have our piece. I've modified it from before, partly because I actually didn't save last time, but we started again. So here what we've got. So we've got a bass set of chords, our chords that have been smoothed a little bit, a bass line's been extrapolated from that, and then a lead melody, and there is a little bit of a counter melody. It's not the greatest counter melody, but there is movement in there as a result of it. Now if we take off the lead, that's leaving that counter as though it were lead. And if you're going, well, how did you get that? Then please don't try to just cheat here and go, oh, well, I know what I'm doing. Go back to episode 1, but really go back to episode 0 because it helps you to understand this, because that's where I talked right from the beginning about let's put genre aside completely. We'll come back to that in a while, but let's put it aside completely so that we can get to what matters. So if we've got this is nice. And it loosely obeys all the rules of melody. But there are only so many times you can hear it go round and round before it becomes, where are we going with this? So then we've got to look at how do we stop ourselves from being stuck in an 8-bar loop and transition this to something where it can become a whole piece of music that people are hopefully going to want to listen to, but we at least are pleased to be able to put out, not as a workout for our synthesizers or proof. And I'll let this run through. Hear how this has dramatically expanded our ability to play exactly the same material. It's same because it's exactly the same notes. Exactly the same octave, exactly the same everything, except that sound is now different. We've gone from, I don't know, a clarinet to a saxophone or something like that. We've moved something, and so it's like, oh, okay, I've got the same material that I'm used to, but oh, now it's a different sound. What's even better is that if this were a clarinet, then it would have the ways of being played of a clarinetter. And once we move to the saxophone, its ways of being played, called articulation, of a saxophone imitator would become saxophonic. Therefore, even though we'd have the same notes, the same delivery, we would have each of those instruments articulating in ways that suit the instrument and obviously the player of said instrument. And this allows us to use exactly the same material but expand upon it. In this case, they're synths, and there is no variety between the two of them other than the way those voices speak. But we've now gone from an 8-bar to a 16-bar pattern. We've doubled what we had before. We've had a 100% win with doing nothing but moving to another instrument. And this is perfectly acceptable. Rock and pop uses a lot of repetition. And if you do your repetition whilst just creating something a little bit different, you can go quite a fair way. But there's only so many times as such that we could loop this 16 bars without it becoming like, really? So don't see that as being the only solution, but it is the simplest, easiest way to do something. We didn't need to do any hard work variation. The next one that we can look at is a good old call and response. Absolute bog standard in jazz. So we've still got our same 8-bar loop. We've split our melody in two. And that provides a little bit of a surprise, because once we get to here, we know our melody it's not finished, because if we were to loop it here, there's something wrong with that. Sounds like trap. And for the person who was getting annoyed with me because I get into trap, well, whatever. But you can hear that this is not complete. Therefore, once we get to this point, we know that it's going to go somewhere. And we can use that knowing that it's going to go somewhere by surprising the listener. We've swapped instruments. But you do need to put in a little bit of time and care before you do that, or as you do that. Here's some I prepared earlier. You need generally to consider, how is this going to transition? Sometimes they can just transition up against each other like that. But you often need a better instrumentalist. Commonly, you might need some sort of changeover. Hear how that's a little smoother? Whereas if we take it out, it just kind of like, okay, where'd that come from? Let's have a little bit of a look as to what I've done here. I've smoothed that over. So if we look at our original lead here, we have got, here's that point of changeover. We've got exactly what we had, and then we move to another note. And here's our new instrument. It starts on this note, which is where this goes. So I've shared the note. That's a great place to start by saying, let's have them share the note. The transition point being where they share that note. This hangs on a little after that's gone, but this sound is largely dying away at this point. Whether we can hear it or not, I don't know. But it's okay to do that. But we've also, on the incoming sound, got this little lead up. And that's quieter. Most people aren't really going to notice that it's there. But it does sit somewhere in the awareness, even though it's not fully conscious. And therefore, when this instrument comes in as the new lead, it's not so much of a surprise. So this is a thing that you can do, and when you get it right, when you get it to balance very nicely, then you can get a lot of value out of the same notes by just having a call and response. So a call and response in the greater sense is guess what that was? That's a variation. So we've got as Hans Zimmer said, our question, and here is our answer. Question and answer. They are another way of calling variation. This is a really important concept to get. So if you're looking to be able to expand the material that you've got, to break out of that 8-bar loop or however many bars you've stuck yourself in your loop because you're busy thinking about how it loops rather than thinking about how it travels ahead. If you started watching a movie, and you know this movie's 2.5 hours long because it's Avatar 3, and it starts and it's like, oh, okay, there's that bit, and then suddenly it does it again, and then again, and again. And unless it's Memento or something like that, and each time we're adding some more information, you're just going to go, yeah, I'm not going to sit here any further than this. That's 15 minutes of my life you've wasted 3 times already. I'm gone. Good luck with Avatar 4. So you've got to make sure that things are clearly, definably moving forward. And call and response becomes a great way of doing that. You can call and response within the same instrument, in which case that's just straight variation, or you can call and response between 2 instruments. So you could have your clarinet doing this, your oboe doing this, and you can keep working those together. You could have clarinet, oboe, clarinet, oboe, clarinet, oboe, actually doing the same thing over and over again. You notice the oboe line there is just doing the same thing over and over again. Write one out like that yourself. You only need 3 notes. And then whatever the first part does, the oboe just answers. But it's the difference between these two where it becomes interesting and fun. And then at a certain point, you might sort of say, I'm going to have that oboe actually change its mind. So from the oboe becomes like, oh, you changed your mind. Or you can even have them work together. Commonly used in classical type music a lot, to be able to sort of say, hey, we can take these 2 things and bring them together, which we'll discuss a little bit later. Really spend time with variations. What happens is that people go, I don't want to do that. Your business, you can do that or not do that as you like, but we need to work out how to vary. So let's look at creating a variation. We've got our melody. I've just cloned it to here. Let's look at a simple way of doing that. So we've got our melody line. What can we do to say, let's move this, let's change this? We've got to think, well, okay, what are we going to change? If we change too much, it just breaks. Remember, answering this line is just purple dishwasher monkey. People are going to go. If we know what we're doing, we could still be doing a which matches, but just in a very 12-tone jazz kind of a way. If people have the understanding to do that, brilliant. But by the time somebody's got the understanding to do that, they're probably not watching this. Or if they are, they're sort of going, oh, that's a funny and cute way of simplifying that. But it's merely a case of getting there. I'm working on the assumption that you're not really getting there yet. So we just need to understand, what are we going to change? The easiest things to change will be to largely keep our rhythm the same, but just change the notes. What have we got here? We've got a chord which is C, E, G. Here we go. That's what we're currently playing at this point. Let's go with an interesting. So let's move this to the A. Now straight away, that's different. Okay, let's consider leaving that the same. See, this is quite a different feel. We go back to our original. So you have same material, but it's noticeably quite different. We've not only changed our harmony, but we've made things go in a slightly different direction. So let's continue with this. I like this. How we're playing with a rather close harmony. Here we've got and then the same with the next one. I'm not going to waste time trying to work out exactly how to play it and mass everything. So where does this want to go? Let's go with same. So that's an E. What chord are we on? We're on the C, so C, E, G here. Let's take him and move him there. That's a really nice melody that bears a strong relationship with the original melody, but is more rich and interesting. So we've got a clear, simple melody followed by a variation which adds more texture. It's clearly very, very related, but it adds more texture with the harmony without actually having to do anything else outside of just changing this. I think we might change the rhythm a little though. I think we might consider actually seeing what happens here. Now, see, there's already a rhythmic element there with our electric piano. What if we do this? I like that, but I'm not sure whether it's right in the situation. Now, what I would do with this here is that I like it. There's a nice grace leading note here, but I don't necessarily want it there all the time. And that's wonderful because now I've found a couple of possible ways of doing this. Variations. Woohoo! So I've given myself a free variation. Now, what I would end up probably doing once I realized that's what's happening here, I would probably do what I'm about to do here. We'll drag, she will take those and get rid of them. This, well, we're going to need to move a long way off down here. So I'll take this, I'll copy it out like this. Make sure it all stays on screen. Set my loop points here. See, now I'm at how many bars? 32 bars. This I like, but I don't necessarily want there every time. Now, if we sit, and requires a little more patience, through our piece of music. Now, do you notice how that works so much better overall? We've got this first very obvious melody. Ooh, that's interesting, that's richer. We keep this simple here. We don't know that, but we do. When we go back to this original melody, it's like, that's not what we had before, because we're thinking this loop here, and it's different from that, so it comes in as being different again. Then, as we get through to here, it's like, oh, it didn't do that last time. Remember, we are pattern matching machines. So once we've introduced somebody a pattern, the variations are what excites them. Remember, we hunt rabbits. And or maybe I didn't talk about this here. I've talked about this over and over. We are designed to hunt rabbits in the undergrowth. And so we're looking for movement. We look at the pattern and go, okay, there's a bush here. There's a tree here. There's another bush there. There's a dead dinosaur over there. We're looking for the difference now in the pattern. When the rabbit moves, it makes the bush move, and we go, something's happening there, so we look for it. So by having these little variations, these are tiny variations, they're details, then we notice them. There was something in here, and I thought, I might want to do this a little differently. Because there's already a movement in here, I'm thinking maybe we emphasize that. There's a little bit of rhythmic movement in the piano. We could possibly even kill that one off. So it creates this sense of ending and pause, which is like, oh, and now it picks up. Don't forget, we've got the ability to change instruments. So there's a real surprise in this, in the sense that it's like, oh, it's different, but I know this, but I'm happy to hear it expressed differently. We might even consider a difference here. There is something in this note that makes me feel like perhaps we could go somewhere with this. So I'm going to split this note here and say, and it's actually not there that we want to swap it. It is perhaps here that we want to swap it. It's rhythmically perhaps a little too interesting for the piece as such. Oh, that's interesting too. See how we've got extra movement. If I had velocity in this, I would be decreasing those. And I do have velocity in this. I programmed the other moves changes. So now I have a significantly more sophisticated piece of music than I had before. Remember, this is a variation. This to here. So these two, we put them up against each other and open them up. See how rhythmically they're really rather similar. What happens now, of course, is if we put these two together, hear how they actually create an interesting result, a harmony of their own, which immediately says to us, hang on, I can now actually copy that out. What does that sound like? Well, it sounds more like the end of a piece to me. So we'll drag our actual section here out, and we will say, let's take this one and take this one. So if a piece now finishes here, this is 1.5 minutes out of 15 seconds. 15, 30, 1.5 minutes out of 15 seconds worth of music. This is a thing to really get across. See how little work I've done, how little I've changed anything to give myself now 1.5 minutes worth of music, which is in striking distance of a full piece of music, by just doing some variations. And a lot of this is simple because we've simply repeated with a different instrument and we've moved some notes around. And we got the two of them playing together. Sounds a little thin now. So we're now giving ourselves a nice sort of finish, in a sense, because this has taken our idea and created more of it. That's actually more arrangement. But I'm showing you how simple it is to take these things and create variety from them. Let's move this. Let's allow ourselves to have another section in here. Let's just take our main stuff. We're not altering any of the fundamental stuff. We probably should at some stage, but nonetheless, we're going to stay with the same thing. And we're going to create something quite off the spot here because this was absolutely not planned. Let's take this and see what we can do with this counter. So the counter sounds like it's pretty quiet. So we've got the same C, A, D, C theme going on here. Thing is playing here. So we've got to work out how to make this have an interesting impact at this point. Let's start with the... You see, that's actually within the same time. That's too fast. We only know that through actually doing it. Remember, there's lots of iteration in making melody. Let's see what happens. Because remember before we used this tight interval? And let's let it go back home, because that's halfway through our run. What might be nice, simply because this is rather quiet, Countermelody, let's find him here, and somewhere a level is down. I'm thinking it's probably up here. So let's take that, let's pump that up to where it was. Let's pull him to -6, set him as the default. At that point, this is called automation, but this is all part of arrangement. So at this point, we're going to say, yep, you've been playing at that level before, but now I want you to get louder. So let's put this to 100. That's added 6 dB. Louder. So that would be like writing on the score fortissimo or something or other. Whatever basically means hit the thing harder, dude. And back to our strings. Also, to answer another question / criticism is that, why don't I just show you this? I did this, and this would be really quick. We'd be done in 2 minutes. Well, this is not how it works. I'm showing you it actually happening in real time because it gives you a very different sort of result or feel from just being shown, oh, well, if we did that instead. If you know what you're doing, then you wouldn't really need that at all. This is about working from those who are like, I don't really know what I should do. Plus, seeing somebody do it in real time gives you a very different feel. And we can go to where I was before, but I'd like to do this figure, which is here. I have a feeling, I can just feel, I don't want it to be there. I want it to actually come in higher. So this is our C chord. So let's look at moving it to E. And I can just feel what that wants to do. Do, 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 do. So let's see what happens here. Now, part of me wants to go here, and there's nothing wrong with this. Except the problem is that it's copying this movement here. The drop, the unexpected drop. It's exactly the same, actually. Although, on a second listen, I like it better. So let's say that's okay. Let's now look at creating a variation of this variation. See, we're constantly iterating and just saying, oh, I varied that, now I'm going to vary that again. So where will we go second time? Let's just be obvious. Okay, that works nicely. One little difference has changed our trajectory. that note no longer feels comfortable. We can go up, but I don't think we're going to be right. Although, that is interesting. I was thinking we were probably going to go down. Which we can do. All of those work quite well. Let's do something different here. Again, we went up. What if we go here? All right, this is interesting. Let's have this finish on our root note. That is a variation. If we look to, let's just solo our 2 tracks. So we're just hearing this one and this one. There are a few iterations, as in we've altered this and then we've altered that and then we've altered that, between here and there, but there's still enough of a relationship that they work out, especially if we look at just the canter on its own. So it's slightly inverted and made a little bit more complex than what that initial canter was. And I'm going to suggest, and this is more of an arrangement move, that we would have this lower to start with. So we've hacked roughly another 6 dB off. We don't even know that counter's there as such until we make it go away. Works. We've now got a piece which is 2 minutes and 4 seconds long. That is a piece fully done from 15 seconds worth of material. And let's be realistic, that 15 seconds worth of material is really 7 seconds worth of material. That's it. This first half here, which is our 4-bar loop here. This has now become this. See how much more sophisticated this is. Again, forget genre, just the level of sophistication and movement and harmony in there. And this is not particularly complex, let me tell you, it's very simple. But the amount of movement and complexity that's in there compared to our initial is huge. Even here to here. Not only is it louder, but it's a lot more sophisticated because we've got extra movement in there. What if we copy this across? Just making that counter a little bit louder. Right. Now, in that, we might also consider introducing a new idea. And that's what I suggested as a new idea might come in. And we'll say, let's have a go at quickly adding this new idea here. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're not going to allow that to be too much in the way of new ideas, but we're just going to let that be here and see what we can create from that, because we are getting close to the hour. Other thing that goes alongside variations is introducing new ideas. Often what happens is people have one single idea in a piece and then they just keep going over and over, often without variations at all. And that, of course, is a total killer. So a new idea is just where we turtle around and go, oh, okay, I like that bit. So here's a new idea I came up with pretty randomly. Can you see the problem? Well, hopefully, if watching particularly lesson 1, you would go, Benedict, you seem to be working in C major here. And that has far too many black keys for C major. And in fact, they're all black keys, so it can't be C major. It's a different key. So we've got to decide, how do we make this fit? This new idea we can make fit, but we've got to make sure that it's going to work. We could say, well, I'm just going to change the key of my piece. Okay, fair enough. There are ways to do that. I'm not going to pretend to be any good at doing that, so we're not going to do that. We're going to make that conform to what we've currently got. So if we say, okay, how do I make this C major? Let's see what happens if we do this. All right, mostly we're in white keys. Well, we've just got that one to deal with. So let's drag it to somewhere. We've got to make an arbitrary decision. All right, there's a new idea. At the moment, it kind of crashes just a little bit in the sense that, okay, what happened with this transition? A lot of that's going to be to do with arrangement, but let's for the moment just split that out that way. We've got a lot happening with our chords. What could we say that this is going to be in terms of chords? So we've got C, A, G, and F. C. Okay, so that's a sus4 or a... So we can do that, which is I'm not quite sure what that's called as a chord. That's a major, that's a sort of augmented kind of a thing. It's like a sus4 with an augmented fifth. So let's just consider doing that then. So let's just make this a little bigger for everyone to see. see what happens. Interesting. Let's drag it to the quieter sound. That's probably more comfortable. Let's give it a root, which is going to be our bass note. Our bass is largely, well, it did go up here, but let's for the moment just go there. All right. Our bass line finished up here. Let's make sure it doesn't leap. Interesting. What happens if we do this? What I'm looking at here is this length, this rhythm. What if we keep that? Now that's interesting because this is actually one of our chord notes. These are our chord notes in our new chords. And that's one leading to another. They're close, just as these were. See how I'm using variation here, existing material. So I've copied this little figure to here. And then it drops, which is maybe not ideal. Thank you. But we've got that in our chord note. So we're allowing ourselves to use existing material that we've just heard. So now I've got a lot of use out of this tiny idea without actually moving that tiny idea in any particular way at all. Which means that I can go again, but I think maybe what we're going to want to do is move this chord in some way. What that might be, I'm not sure, but we're going to do it. So we've got... So let's borrow, seeing we're playing with susses all of a sudden, let's go to a normal C major and then a sus. Cool. Let's take our idea and we need a variation of it that's going to fit with our new improved Countermelody. So it's this and here, and we've got to say, well, what was it? Actually, I won't do that. I will copy it, I will clone it, and then say, how do we make it fit? It does fit because it's in tune, but let's just look at making an arpeggio to see what happens. Right, that works. But I feel like I need some kind of in-between. If we do this. So maybe we're correct to actually go with what we had before. Okay, no, I actually like that. So we just need this to go again to finish our chord sequence. Because remember, we've got targets now. We aren't free-forming. We can't just keep doing wild random stuff. So let's copy these across. This needs to do something here. And that's just remembering the chord, which is a sus2. Because I know that next bit's coming, I need to bridge and work towards it. So now here, I feel like we want a little bit of a gap because we've got this funny sort of agitated idea that's come in. So what do we want this to be? We've got our canter here and our thing. We need to have something that relates. Which might be simply to halve the speed of it. Okay, it's a variation. Is it the best? No. I'm making this up as I go. No. The timing's off. Okay. And I like it actually resolves on the beginning of the next section. But I like the way that it does it because it throws us into the next bit. I'm a bit of a fan of doing that. Some people say you shouldn't, but I like it. It works for me. So we now have one, two, three, four, 1, 2, 3, 4. What if I copy those to there? And then these, 1, 2, 3, 4, to here. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but let's see what happens. What I don't love about that is that it steals from the electric piano, and I actually like the electric piano there. So it's using all the material that we've got, just changing levels in this case. So we've got velocity for the instrument, so we're changing that What if I take this and apply it to this instrument here? Now that's my bass line, but I don't want it to play in the bass, or at least I don't think I want it to. Maybe I do. Let's take this. No, not all of that. Sorry. Pressing buttons a little too eagerly here. If I move that up, I don't think this is going to work as well. I actually quite like that. The thing that I might consider here is what happens. Might just consider holding that. Great. So our piece now is 2 minutes and 20 seconds long. That's pretty well. That's a pretty well full piece. And again, remember, we started with this. Didn't even have a rhythm when I started. And we've extrapolated it out to be able to have this new idea come in. Our idea comes back. So we've got our first variation. I'd ideally like a new sound at this point. But let's see what we can do with that. We'll take that and move it an octave. Good enough. So this is kind of giving us a break. The unexpected new idea that actually sits in one spot. So when this comes back, it kind of explodes. Because we've worked with tension and release. So this kind of spends a lot of time not really doing much. So I would actually be looking to have some other kind of variation, some other little thing. Let's... And this has gone longer than I intended, and you will have stuck with me or not. Okay, I like the idea. Like the idea, but not the execution. Move the octave. Remember, as I said before, we could do the oboe that just says the same thing over and over again. That's essentially what we're doing here. But it feels a little incomplete, so we're going to let him have another note. Countermelody, what I'm looking at here is the series. If this is a chord, 1, 3, 1, 3, 5, 7. What's it going to be? Doesn't mean I have to use them. It's interesting. Let's keep the same shape. We've got velocity, so let's use it. That works really nicely, because you see how this, the bit that trails, has now actually become a leader for this. See how they now reflect each other, pull and response. So we've given more intelligence to this when it comes in. And it's again these iterations of constantly adding these little changes. This one, I think I would like to have different. Where was that? That was... So it's a variation, stops it from being the same. I liked the idea of same, but then I want it to be not exactly the same. It gets too rigid. That idea that's trying to break out, and it kind of does here. Our levels are probably all over the place, but that doesn't matter when we're composing too much. I think that's enough for now. We've covered a little bit more arrangement than I was planning to, but I wasn't sure how I was going to handle arrangement yet. There's a lot of bigger picture stuff to look at in arrangement. This is all still very much about variation, so being able to take that which is using elements of what came before to springboard into what comes next. And we can keep iterating and changing little bits as we go until we've got something that if we were to put the two together, they would appear unrecognizable. But once we see what connects them, like a family tree, you know, great-great-great-great-great-grandparents to massively great-grandchild, if we put the two together and say, do they look like each other, then it's entirely possible we're going to go, nah, those people are black and white. This one's pink. But once we put the two together and we see the steps in the middle, we can go, well, that's where they invented colour photography. Now I see how they're the same. Bit of a fake, but you should understand what I mean. So this is super important. Homework. You need to make variations, lots of them. As you see, by continually iterating variations and working on varieties of the same material, I've taken a very small amount and made it go a pretty long way. With a few more hours work, I could have a fully completed piece. I would obviously want to create some more sounds and variety, and then to mix it. But that could be done in a day, 2 days tops. And it would be a nice, complete, very workable piece of music. Whether you personally liked it would be irrelevant. Remember here, this is not about genre. It's about simply saying, can we make something that functions musically? Because once we know how to make things function musically, then we just change them. You know, we change the brand of toothpaste, and suddenly we've got a new child. This is all it is. You know, we're putting lipstick on the pig. That's all we're doing. But if your pig is so ugly and so smelly that, that it just doesn't work, it's not recognizable as a pig, it doesn't matter how much lipstick you put on it, it won't turn into Robert Smith. Mixing our metaphor very unfortunately for poor Robert. But nonetheless, this is how it works. So your homework is to sit there and make variations. Create a very simple figure or a motif. And use this one if you want. Do, 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 do. If I were to write that out, it would probably look something like, where am I? Here. It would probably look something like, there you go. That's it. Sorry, I realised that was a little hidden from you. But we've got short, short, long, short, short, long, short, short, long, short, short, long. Brilliant. That's a variation. Right here, we've got same, now we've got a variation of it. And you keep iterating variations. Let's give ourselves a little bit more to go. And we're going to go they're variations as well. It's transformed our short, short, long into a long, short, short. And then a blip, blip, which should actually be there, which is same sort of thing. We've just added a rhythmic variation into it, which wasn't there before. And we could go And let's put our thing here. So initial idea and variations as we go through. And they're the same material, like this is literally it's the same material, it's the same notes, they're just moved. So your job is to spend a lot of time doing this kind of stuff, not cloning mine, although you can start there to get a sense of, oh, I see how that works, but then keep iterating, keep expanding until you can move, not to end up with something that's random gibberish, is hard to justify as a valid variation of at the point that we're working here. So keep working and having a clear sense to the listener of how the relationship exists from one iteration to another. And when we get to our final iteration in this, we start to go, that's a bit. And this is how we get there. We can take an idea, which is to turn it into something that is more exciting for either our situation or our situation which is called genre. Because obviously this is a little bit more disco-y than this, which is pretty flat. All right, a bit longer than I hoped for, but I figured this one might end up dragging out. But variations really takes time. So remember what we've covered is basics of variations and why it's important so that we don't get stuck. Remember, all of this is about not getting stuck, being able to take our initial idea, which people these days call a loop, and to drag it out. Remember, see here, we've gotten 7 seconds of music that within the hour and a quarter that I've been working here or less, we've turned into almost 2.5 minutes worth of valid music. So keep working on those variations and its bigger relative, which is arrangement, which we will look at more next time. So go out there, have fun with this. It's important that you have fun working with variations, because as you work with variations, the better you get. If you avoid working with variations, the not better you get. In other words, it gets harder and you start to get more and more stuck. The whole idea of this is, remember, it's about how to make music effectively. And this is how all the composers do it. And the more you do it, the more natural and instinctive it becomes. And as you may have noticed, instinctively, I took this new idea and then started to actually make it fit the piece, so that the new bits that I added in here started to instinctually work with the idea that was there, so that by the time this idea, which was pretty random, comes in, it now seems to make sense much more musically. It doesn't make sense mix-wise at the moment, but it's not meant to. It's just supposed to work musically because we've now got a sense of like, oh, I can see that idea coming. It's not Purple Dishwasher Monkey. Alrighty, any questions, please put them below. Oh, and I've totally forgotten, if you are getting value from this, please return value by popping over to my Ko-fi, whatever you want to pronounce it as, and buy me some virtual coffee, buy some of my stuff, buy some of my music, whatever. But virtual coffee, direct return, which encourages me to be able to do this again and keep this going for you. You have a great day.